Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel and welcome to the bad review of the Black Ops 6 beta. Yesterday we went through the entirety of the beta, weekend 1, weekend 2, things we learned from Treyarch and Activision, and discussed everything that was essentially good in my mind about the beta, some of the things they improved upon, some of the new additions to the game that were good. That was yesterday's video. Today is going to be the exact opposite, discussing what I believe to be the bad aspects of the Black Ops 6 beta, of which there is quite a lot. You'll notice this video is probably a little bit longer than the good video, but that's the state of the Call of Duty franchise anymore. Of course, skill-based matchmaking is going to be at the forefront of the minds of the Call of Duty community when it comes to any game that comes out, and we have discussed skill-based matchmaking to death, so I'm not going to have a dedicated skill-based matchmaking aspect to this video, but of course, skill-based matchmaking, freaking rampant during the beta. It's going to be the same during the launch, but I don't want to dedicate an entire section in this video to skill-based matchmaking, but rather talk about how skill-based matchmaking affects different aspects of the game as we cover all the various aspects of the Black Ops 6 multiplayer, everything from the maps to the spawns to the netcode to everything else. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, grab a drink, grab a snack, and let's jump into the bad aspects of Black Ops 6. First things first, the multiplayer maps. I would say this is one of the things that people have been talking about the most when it comes to this game. They said there's going to be a heavy focus on small to medium-sized maps within the game, which I understand where they're coming from. Typically, historically, if you look at the really big maps in COD history, fans aren't a big fan of that, right? Like Gustav Cannon back in World War II, Stonehaven back in Ghost, you think Derail, maybe Array from Black Ops 1. Maps like that typically go down history as terrible maps that nobody wants to play. So what Treyarch decided to do this year is essentially every map in the game is going to be small to medium sized. Like there's not going to be a single map in the game that is larger than, say, Raid from Black Ops 2, or the example they gave, Summit from Black Ops 1. Every map is going to be that size or smaller, while leaning more towards small. Every map is essentially kind of somewhere between Nuketown and Raid in terms of size, and I feel like that is a bad move overall for the Call of Duty player base. I know that a lot of people just like to play the small map playlist. They like to jump on Shipment, Shoot House, Rust, DOS House. They like the meat grinder maps, essentially. Maps where you turn off your brain, you go in there, you get a bunch of kills, you get a bunch of deaths, you level up, you get your camos, you get your attachments, and then you move on, right? And I feel like that works in the short term, but long term, I don't think that's a good thing for the Call of Duty scene as a whole, because part of what makes those maps feel good, like picture some of the most iconic maps in COD history. Obviously, you have the small ones like Nuketown and Shipment, but think of other ones like Firing Range, for example. That is a fantastic map that is relatively small. One of the reasons why that map stood out, and one of the reasons why that map was so beloved, was because it was a stark contrast to a lot of the other maps that Black Ops 1 had. You had amazing maps like Hanoi, which were relatively bigger. You had Grid, which was relatively bigger. You had Jungle. You had all these different maps with varying sizes, and every map felt a lot more unique in that sense. If every single map, like I said, is going to be essentially the size of somewhere between Nuketown and Raid, then those maps are going to lose their appeal, and they're not going to be nearly as interesting as they once were. Every map is going to look different, but every map is going to essentially play the same, and when you don't have that variety in play style going from map to map, everything just kind of feels homogenized, and the end result might end up being a bunch of apathy coming from the community where they don't get as invested in the game because the game just kind of feels the same all the time. The matchmaking, we've talked about that a million times. The skill-based matchmaking makes it so every match already feels pretty much the same. You play essentially the same players every single match. They may have different names, but everybody plays the same, and then with every map also essentially playing the same while having a slightly different layout may lead to a lot of burnout from the COD player base. I am concerned about that. I will say that of the maps that we had during the beta, I don't think any of them were particularly terrible, but they weren't overly good either. And here I'm gonna have to cut to some footage, unfortunately. I talked about it in my previous video where I was recording and I was messing with my settings so much, I ended up getting like 4 to 7 hours or so of Black Ops 6 footage that was all just really low bitrate, and it looks terrible, and I apologize for that, but the beta's over. It's not like I can go back and play and record new footage, but here you guys can see like just exactly how bad some of the maps felt in this game, and if every single map is essentially going to be like this, that definitely has me worried about the future of Black Ops 6 and all the maps that have yet to be revealed by Treyarch and Activision. I would also say because of how small the maps are, the spawns are downright atrocious, and the grenade spam feels worse than COD 4, if that even makes any sense. Like if you remember back to Call of Duty 4 or Modern Warfare Remastered where people ran frag times 3, I swear to you, I died to more grenades, and grenades have more of an impact in this game compared to a game like that where there's potentially 18 grenades in the pockets of your opponents at any given time. Like, how small the maps are and how fast the maps are and how fast everybody is moving essentially means that semtexes are everywhere. Like, I could not be the only one who, when I played the beta, just constantly you hear the sound of a semtex about ready to blow up everywhere you go. It's like someone's phone's going off all the time every time you're playing the game. It sounds like a ringtone, for crying out loud. The amount of grenades that are just just absolutely everywhere. And with the small and chaotic nature of the maps, the grenade spam makes everything feel even more random, which further cements the stim shots as the de facto tactical that you must run on every single class, with some consideration also being added for running the 3 red perks for the health regeneration bonuses. Like the maps themselves, during the beta, they just played ridiculously quick, and apparently we're not going to get any variety or any change to that in the full launch of the game, which is concerning. And like I said, the spawns were just atrocious, whether we're talking about the spawn trapping on Babylon or just the way that no matter what map or mode you were playing, it felt like you were either taking people out as they spawned or you were the person taking damage right after you spawned. Treyarch did confirm in their patch notes that what they consider to be a bad spawn is taking damage within the first 3 seconds of your life, and that seemed to happen all the freaking time back during the Black Ops 6 beta, man. Like, that happened all the time. And again, we didn't get the entire breadth of the maps that we're going to have in Black Ops 6, but every map is essentially going to be roughly the same size, which means that spawns are probably always going to be terrible in Black Ops 6. They did say that they're working on that. They're going to continue to adjust spawns and things, but with how small the maps are, I'm not sure if the spawn situation can possibly even get better. So I guess we're going to have to wait and see on that. But the spawns and the map design just were not my favorite parts of Black Ops 6 whatsoever, and I think the vast majority of the community tends to agree with that. Next up here, something I think we can all agree on, the netcode was pretty freaking atrocious in Black Ops 6. It was inconsistent and messy throughout the entire beta, and this made gunfights feel all over the place, like you melt in half a frame, but at times it seems like opponents eat 7 or 8 of your shots. This combined with skill-based matchmaking and the small maps made for an especially chaotic and honestly not very fun experience during weekend 1 of the beta, though thankfully it did get better during weekend 2, but I have a feeling netcode at launch is going to be all over the place like it tends to be when a new Call of Duty game comes out. This issue is exacerbated by the new Omni movement, which you'll note I did not include Omni movement as a talking point during my good review of Black Ops 6, and that's because I'm sort of torn about it. I don't think Omni movement is good, but I don't think it's bad either. Honestly, I don't really think it changes much about COD for me, except at times it makes things I want to do more difficult. Now imagine this scenario, and I guarantee this happened to you a couple of times while playing the beta. You're running towards the B flag, you get right next to B, and you want to go prone behind cover because somebody is shooting at you. You go to press your button to go prone, but since you're moving, instead you either dolphin dive like 5 feet past the flag, or you slide past the cover you're trying to get behind, and now you're stuck in the open. How many times did that end up happening? Like if you're moving and you try to go prone, you're just going to slide or dive. You can't just go prone, and that felt really off-putting at first. I actually ended up taking a page out of Exclusive Ace's book, and I changed my settings to slide only because I really didn't see a need for the dive, like the big crazy dolphin dive. Most of the time I would use it without meaning to and die as a result, and some may say that's a skill issue, but just overall it just wasn't something that was overly needed for me the way I play the game. As the beta went on, I started to see less and less people using the Omni movement. At first everybody was diving around corners and trying to be action heroes essentially, which is what Treyarch wants, but eventually I think the gimmick of it kind of wore off, and it's just now this tool that you can use. It does feel good to be able to kind of side sprint at times, but it doesn't really change much about the game, I don't think, and I'm sure there's some movement gods out there who just adore the new system because they love putting in 8 times the effort to get 1 times the kills. There are these dudes out there making videos about button combinations for movement like they're entering in a Mortal Kombat combo just to try to win a gunfight, and I don't get it. Like, the movement is really just more of a novelty in this game, and with the netcode being all over the place during parts of the beta, I imagine more movement is only going to make some of those situations worse. Like, here's a great example of what I mean. All within the matter of like a quarter of a second, this player was able to slide like 5 feet, back up during the slide, go prone, then jump 5 feet in the air and gun me down, all in under like a third of a second or something. Now obviously this dude is locked in with his $300 controller, but the real skill gap here is dealing with the netcode, which was clearly taking a dump on my face as all these new animations were essentially just lag comped together. I think there are some positives to the new movement, but overall I don't really find it good or bad. It's just sort of something new that we have in Black Ops 6, but when the connection is not at its peak, then it's going to become more of a problem with that movement, and not to mention the sheer amount of packet burst that was happening due to these servers was nothing short of astounding during the beta, and it seems like that is an issue that is just not going to go away, considering it's been plaguing Call of Duty ever since skill-based matchmaking took over back in 2019. Next up, we have something that bothered me more so than other people, but I'm curious to hear what you guys think about it. Tac Sprint. I don't know why it's in the game. Like, I really don't know why Call of Duty has tac sprint anymore. It sort of makes sense for Warzone, right, given the size of the map, but on these teeny tiny, almost shipment to Nuketown sized maps, it just causes for 2 or 3 inconsistent movement speeds that really feel out of date and janky. In fact, I think it could be argued that most people go into their controller settings and just turn on auto tac sprint anyways, which just further means that the feature pretty much doesn't have a place in COD anymore. It's not tactical movement, it's just something that you automatically enable that makes you move slightly faster when you first start sprinting, and then sometimes it comes back, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes double time works, sometimes it doesn't. I just really feel like this is a feature that doesn't really have a place in Call of Duty anymore because it just feels really bad to use, especially for your controller. I'm not sure what the ideal way of fixing it would be, but it almost seems like removing tac sprint and then just slightly increasing your normal sprint speed like we had in the old games would be the move, because I would just reiterate one more time that tac sprint felt clunky and bad during the beta, and I'm seeing a lot of people online questioning why it even exists in the first place. So I'm curious to hear what you guys think about this. Another thing I would like to talk about, and I know there's going to be controversial opinions being thrown all around on this one, but aim assist, right? The aim assist that we had during the beta. Overall, I felt like it was okay. You know, it kind of felt like it was a little lighter than in the previous COD games for me. Maybe it was just adapting to a new game, getting used to the new guns, the new maps, the new movement or whatever, but aim assist did feel a little bit lighter in the beta for me. I'm sure that some mouse and keyboard players are going to disagree and say that aim assist is cranked up to infinity, but overall, I felt like aim assist was fine during the beta. The game didn't quote unquote aim for me, and it almost felt like the right balance, but what I will say is that having 0 aim assist for the first like 3 meters away from your character was just a really weird decision by Treyarch. Even when it's controller versus controller, both players are now playing with what feels like double their sensitivity up close, and when you couple in skill-based matchmaking with people constantly sliding around, and of course we have the small map design, you're going to find yourself in a lot more of those bad breath distance gunfights in this game as compared to previous games. And honestly, having the lack of aim assist there just sort of takes you out of the game. Like, the game feels one way 90% of the time, but then the other 10% of the time, your aiming input gets turned upside down and it just feels out of place entirely. The community as a whole really seems torn on this as well. I'm not even joking. This was the first thread I opened on the subject, and the OP, who is a controller player, does not like the aim assist change up close. 3 meters away, you do not get aim assist within Black Ops 6. Well, the top comment, which is from a mouse and keyboard player, says, "You find yourself missing shots and want the game to aim for you." Somebody then responds, "Limit mouse turn speed to console speed," noting that it's easier to aim up close with mouse and keyboard, to which the other guy says, "Yeah, everyone should be hamstrung because you use the shittier input." How the turntables here, ladies and gentlemen. This debate is never going to end in Call of Duty now that cross-platform is here. Back in the day, a lot of good players went to mouse and keyboard because it was objectively the best input for shooter games. Everything you do with a mouse and keyboard is your own input. It's all precise. It can be incredible. These players, when they went to mouse and keyboard, were absolutely dog shitting on controller players because controller players, myself included, I'm one of them, we play with clunky joysticks, right? They're not nearly as precise. So the game studios increase the amount of aim assist so that people on an imprecise input can compete with people on a precise input. Then the mouse and keyboard players say that the game is just aiming for the controller players, but when controller players ask the keyboard and mouse players to limit their input turn speed and capacity to that of a controller, they get mad. Essentially, there's no winning here. Like, lots of people just want to play on a controller because that's what they've always used. Some people for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, doesn't really matter. And Treyarch is making it hard now for people to use that input in certain scenarios, and I really don't see the benefit here. Again, I know there's going to be mouse and keyboard players that completely disagree, but I'm just giving you guys my honest feedback here. I'm curious, the actual number of people who play with mouse and keyboard on COD versus the amount of people that play on controllers. Is it completely out of the realm of possibility to say that probably 90 to 95% of people play COD on controller? I don't think that's out of the question. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility whatsoever. So we're going to annoy the vast majority of the community with an aim assist change that only benefits the, 5 to 10% of people out there who use keyboard and mouse on a game that was essentially built for controllers? I don't know, man. It just feels weird having this change being implemented into the game, but it's something we're going to have to get used to. But don't be surprised if Treyarch decides to revert this change before the full launch of Black Ops 6. I'd say the easiest solution would just be only let mouse and keyboard players play against other mouse and keyboard players on the same input, right? That would just make the most sense. That way they can't complain about controllers can't complain about mouse and keyboard. But if that happened, I guarantee matchmaking would just die, essentially. It would take forever because barely anybody uses mouse and keyboard on COD compared to controller, right? It's just one of those things where no one's ever going to be happy on this. I'm just saying, I'm putting this in the bad aspect of my review for Black Ops 6 because it just feels freaking weird to have your gunfights 90 to 95% of the time feel one way, but if you get in the bad breath distance with somebody, your gunfights feel a completely different way. It just feels so imprecise and clunky, and I really don't understand why they added that to the game. Now, speaking of things I'm not sure why they added to the game, let's talk about motion sickness here for a second. I'm not somebody who suffers from this normally, but there are countless reports online, it's a simple Google away, you guys can check it out, of people who feel nauseous, like straight up sick, when they play Black Ops 6. Now, a lot of this stems from the death cams in the game and then the wobbling of the characters. People are saying that it's almost as if your character has no neck muscles whatsoever. When they run, their head just bobs constantly back and forth and it makes them sick. Like, I actually had to change my settings on my stream because people were watching my stream saying that just watching the game, not even playing, but watching the game was literally making them feel sick. And the worst part of this is they sort of intended for this to happen. And by them, I'm talking about Treyarch. In an interview at Call of Duty Next, I think it was Matt Skronks and Yale something or other, I honestly forget the guy's name, but regardless, in an interview at Call of Duty Next, they said that they wanted to make death more enjoyable in the game. Essentially, death is the one constant thing in COD, so in lines with their plans to make Black Ops 6 feel more like an action movie, they increased the movement of the death cams and the head bobs to make dying look more interesting. They wanted to make death more interactive and something that was more interesting for you to watch, and in doing so, that started to make a lot of people feel sick. Like, for people like me, it doesn't really bother me, but there are people out there who genuinely feel nauseous watching the new and improved dying that Black Ops 6 has. Like, how freaking crazy is that? I hope they get rid of that before the launch of the game. Like, we gotta make dying look cooler, and all they're doing is making people feel sick, man. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. The same thing is true of the hacking situation. Tons and tons of videos and clips surfaced of people hacking and cheating during the Black Ops 6 beta, and the thing about cheating in Black Ops 6 is, I said it before and I'll say it again, it's going to be easier than ever this year because the game is so accessible. Thanks to Game Pass now, all you need is a new burner email account, you make a new Activision ID, you get the $1 PC Game Pass subscription, which you can refund, by the way, and then cheaters are free to just jump right back into the game and go mess around and do whatever. And there's so many different kinds of cheats in the game overall. There's people using straight up aimbot, whereas there's also just people that just have an unlimited UAV constantly. They can see people through walls, they just always know where people are. They may not have aim assist or anything, but they always know where everybody is all the time, and as such, those players are able just to run around and rack up tons and tons of kills. And fun fact, most of those people you guys are watching in Warzone or whatever, they're dropping these crazy nuke gameplays and just always seem to have a sixth sense for everything, they're using this shit, man. Like, the hacking situation in COD is getting out of control, frankly. And for me personally, like, way back when I first started getting into COD, I used to love watching those high kill gameplays, you know, watching people drop 100 kills, watching people drop these double nukes. In fact, hell, way back in the day, a lot of you guys might remember Moab Monday, Moab Friday, Chem Strike Saturday, DNA Saturday. I used to have entire series on my channel where fans would submit their own gameplays of them getting nukes and stuff like that, and I would feature their gameplay on my channel, talk about their gameplay, talk about the strategy they use, the class setup they use, promote their channel and stuff like that. Like, that's how much I enjoyed that stuff. But when people started hacking as much as they are, and when people started reverse boosting, when skill-based matchmaking took over, and now people are two-boxing and doing all this nonsense, right? High score gameplay could not be any more boring for me to watch anymore. You know, it's just one of those things. Like, to play it, sure, maybe that's one thing, but watching somebody go 80-5 or whatever with a new amazing setup, it's like, dude, you're probably either cheating, or skill-based matchmaking threw you a bone, or you intentionally got into this bot lobby by two boxing, or this, that, or the other thing. There's no such thing as an even playing field in COD anymore in terms of like gameplay footage and stats and things of that nature. Like, it's all just algorithmic, manipulative nonsense, and I'm kind of just over it when it comes to watching people do good, you know. And just one of those things where you have so many people out there who think they're going to be the next big guy because they're putting up all these crazy scores, they're so amazing at the game. It's like, dude, nobody gives a shit, man. The playing field is not even anymore, therefore just stay in your own lane, do your own thing, and just play the game for fun. Essentially, that's like all you can really do. But yeah, I'm curious to see how the hacking situation is going to manifest itself within Black Ops 6 at launch. We're going to have to wait and see. Next up here, I want to talk about visibility. This is something that bothered me a lot during the Black Ops 6 beta, and I'm sure it's something that bothered a lot of you as well. As Call of Duty has progressed over the years, it's no question that the games look better now. Graphically, things are beautiful, but as technology progressed, the dev teams seem to have forgot that we're playing a shooter game here where you kind of want to be able to see what you're shooting at, essentially. Whether it's all the smoke coming from explosions, the ambient dust blowing around in the wind, the light rays coming down from the sky, I had a really freaking hard time seeing anything in this game. And I know it's not just me and my old man eyes here either, because I've read a lot of complaints online about about the visibility not only in Black Ops 6, but most of the recent Call of Duty games. It's almost like they do this on purpose to add more chaos to the maps and allow people to get kills that they shouldn't. But overall, the visibility in Black Ops 6 was pretty rough during the beta, and I'm not sure it's going to improve between then and the full launch of the game. When we compare what we saw during the beta to, say, Modern Warfare 2 Remastered, the two can't even really be compared. Like, the older CODs were such a great combination of beautiful graphics, especially for the time, combined with proper visibility where players stuck out and you could see more than 5 feet in front of you. A great example I like to give is I could be on one side of high rise in the OG Modern Warfare 2 and I can distinctly see into the building across the map where people are moving, where the desks are, you know, all that stuff. I can see everything across the map. But now with the sheer amount of dust and clutter and smoke and particle effects and God rays coming from the sky, like, it's just really freaking hard to see how beautiful the Black Ops 6 maps are, because I will say they do look good. They don't play overly well, but they do look good. But they added so much visual noise to the game that visibility is just all over the place, and it makes for a very inconsistent experience. That is something I really wish they would just get rid of here in the Call of Duty franchise. To wrap things up here, a couple of other things. The Call of Duty HQ just needs to die. Booting this game up was an absolute chore. You have to boot up the Call of Duty HQ. You then have to boot up Modern Warfare 3. From Modern Warfare 3, you have to boot up Black Ops 6. And not to mention, every single time you open the game, there's an update required for some reason. So you boot up Modern Warfare 3, update requires restart. Once you're back into Modern Warfare 3, you try to open up Black Ops 6, and then from Black Ops 6, update requires restart. So then you have to boot up Modern Warfare 3 again, boot up Black Ops 6 again, and then you can finally play the game. Like, the Call of Duty HQ, it just needs to die. I hate the Call of Duty HQ. There's literally no advantage to it, especially when it comes to this. And this just came out today. Tokens, right? Tokens in the COD franchise, whether we're talking about weapon XP or player XP or battle pass XP, you know, the Call of Duty HQ kind of unifies all that stuff. Tokens are not going to carry over from Modern Warfare 3 into Black Ops 6. They will carry over into Warzone, but they're not going to do it for the Black Ops 6 multiplayer or zombies experience. Why? Well, they're not really giving us an answer for that, which is just, is that not the whole point of the Call of Duty HQ, to unify everything between the games? Like, that's the whole point pretty much, right? But apparently not. I do understand the argument that maybe they don't want people playing a ton of Modern Warfare 3, then racking up like 48 hours of double weapon XP and regular XP, then jumping into Black Ops 6 and then blitzing through the content. But at the same time, who cares if somebody wants to do that? If somebody who's been playing the game that much wants to blitz through the entire experience and get everything as fast as possible, who cares? That doesn't affect me, it doesn't affect you. Like, I don't understand the downside to that whatsoever. And then not to mention on top of that, the no campaign early access. I talked about that in a previous video, but I still think that's pretty stupid. There are people out there defending, like, I don't know if like they're trying to get like an Activision creator code, or maybe they just like being a contrarian for the sake of being a contrarian. I don't know, but they're like, there's no downside to not having the campaign early. Like, there's no such thing as fear of missing out or anything like that when it comes to the launch of the game. And I completely disagree. It was amazing for fans to be able to play the campaign before the game came out at their own pace. They don't have to worry about being spoiled or anything. They can just jump right into the campaign, dial in their settings, get everything all set up, especially considering PC optimization for Black Ops 6 was freaking terrible. So maybe get things set up on their PCs, play through the campaign at their own pace, unlock their rewards, and then be ready for multiplayer and zombies when the game officially comes out. That was fantastic. Why would you ever say that was not a good idea? Obviously, that's something we should have in the COD franchise. By going back to the old system, because they're so worried about the game being review bombed like Modern Warfare 3 did, we now find ourselves in a situation where people, when they get the game at launch, have to choose once again. And sure, that's how things used to be back in the day, back in the OG Black Ops, the OG Modern Warfare 2, Black Ops 2, or whatever. The whole game came out at the exact same time, so you had to pick. Do you want to play zombies? Do you want to play multiplayer? Do you want to jump in the campaign? Whatever, dude. But for a lot of people, they're going to want to jump into multiplayer or zombies first, but they're also going to want to play the campaign, and the longer they put off the campaign and just try to dive into the multiplayer and zombies, the longer they're risking getting spoiled for that campaign, especially if it's going to be another like 5-hour campaign like we had before, and it's getting review bombed and spoiled online everywhere, right? So there's literally no downside to the early access campaign if you're a Call of Duty fan, and if you're against the idea of campaign early access, you probably have an anime girl as your profile picture. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's pretty much the long and the short of this video here today. That's pretty much all the big stuff that I would consider to be negatives for Black Ops 6. I might have missed one or two bigger things. I could talk about the smaller stuff like the winner's circle, but honestly, if the winner's circle is our biggest problem, then I think we're doing just fine. I think it's the bigger stuff like map design, netcode, gunplay, spawns, skill-based matchmaking, and visibility that take much higher priority when judging and discussing a game like Call of Duty, and that's what I wanted to do here in this video. So I hope you guys all enjoyed it. Leave your thoughts and feedback on Black Ops 6 down there in the comments. Thank you all so much for listening, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful day.